What you are about to hear is something almost no one says, but it explains something that only Messi can generate in people. And a perfect example of this happened at the Americana in November 2023. That night should not have ended the way it did. Argentina had just done something historic. It beat Brazil in its own home and broke an unbeaten streak Brazil had never lost as the home team in World Cup qualifiers. But the most shocking thing was not just the result. The most shocking thing was the atmosphere, because that night started with tension, violence in the stands, a delay in the match, and a very harsh image. Messi taking his teammates off the field until the situation calmed down. And even so, in the middle of that hostile environment, something unthinkable happened. Part of the Americana, the most symbolic temple of Brazilian soccer, ended up recognizing the rival captain. There were boos, yes. There was anger, of course. But there was also applause, and that, coming from Brazil toward an Argentine, is not a minor detail. Because we are not talking about just any rival. We are talking about Argentina in Brazil. We are talking about the biggest classic in South America. We are talking about two countries that have measured themselves through soccer for generations. So the question is inevitable. How is it possible that the country most proud of its soccer surrenders, even for an instant, to Messi? How do you get to that point? How does a soccer player manage to provoke, in the country most proud of its soccer tradition, something no Argentine player had ever achieved in that way? And why is that same phenomenon happening in completely different places on the planet, like India, Bangladesh, and other corners where South American soccer should feel distant? Today we are going to understand why the Scaloneta broke nationalism, why Messi stopped being only Argentine, and why, looking ahead to the 2026 World Cup, the entire world seems to have decided that Leo no longer has borders. Because now, it is no longer just about remembering Qatar. Now, it is about something even bigger. Messi is already on Argentina's list to play in his 6th World Cup. The Scaloneta arrives in 2026 as world champion, with a base that still keeps many of the players who made history in Qatar, and with a debut set for June 16th against Algeria, in a group that also includes Jordan and Austria. And although defending the title is already enormous pressure for Argentina, for millions of people around the world there is an even deeper emotion. Seeing whether Messi can give us one last impossible chapter. Because Messi's story no longer belongs only to Argentina. It belongs to soccer. And in a certain way, it belongs to anyone who has ever felt that one person could represent something bigger than a sport. To understand it, you have to start with something basic. For decades, soccer was essentially nationalistic. You loved your national team because it was your country's team. The rival was the enemy, not in a literal sense, but emotionally. The jersey was an extension of the flag. Victory was a form of national pride, and losing against another country could hurt like a collective wound. In that model, it was almost impossible for someone from the outside to adopt another national team with real emotion. You could admire a foreign player. You could respect a rival national team. You could even enjoy its style. But truly rooting for it, suffering with it, crying for it, celebrating its goals as your own, that was something else. Messi broke that model. Not because he set out to do it. Not because he built a campaign to make the world like him. Not because he tried to become a global symbol. He broke it because what he does on a field is so extraordinary, so rare, and so emotional that it transcends any flag, any cultural border, and any historic rivalry. Messi plays soccer in a way that even those who do not support Argentina can recognize, and that is the first thing. But it is not the only thing. Because there is something the Scaloneta has that no other team in the world has right now, and that explains why it generates such global fanaticism. It is not just Messi, it is the way the team was built around him. The Scaloneta looks like a Praetorian Guard, a group of players who understood that their collective mission was to protect, accompany, and empower the last great genius of an era. And that connects with people in a way that teams full of individual stars do not always achieve. Rodrigo de Paul running 40 meters to recover a ball, Messi lost. Enzo Fernandez covering spaces when Leo breaks free. Alexis McAllister playing with a silent intelligence that organizes everything. Lautaro Martinez and Julian Alvarez pressing, fighting, wearing down opponents. And Dibu Martinez with that mix of competitive madness, street personality, and popular charisma that makes him recognizable anywhere in the world. This team is not perceived as a sum of stars. It is perceived as a group of friends who would give their lives for their leader. Like a band. like a family, like a team that understood soccer is not won only with talent, but also with loyalty, sacrifice, and a shared emotional cause. And that creates something very powerful, because anyone in any country can understand that story. You do not have to be Argentine to be moved by a group that plays as if it were defending one of its own. You do not have to have been born in Buenos Aires, Rosario, Cordoba, or Mendoza to feel that there is something human there, something recognizable, something that goes beyond the result. The world understood something that perhaps Argentines from the inside took longer to process. Elite soccer is running out of the last geniuses of an unrepeatable generation. Modern soccer has become more physical, more tactical, more systematic. Players are increasingly complete athletes. They run more, they press better, they occupy spaces with surgical precision. They are prepared from childhood to function within increasingly complex structures. But at the same time, soccer seems to have fewer and fewer individual artists, fewer players who can change a match with a pause, with a touch, with a dribble, with a play that cannot be explained on a tactical board. And in that context, Messi represents something soccer feels it is about to lose: pure magic, talent that does not need to shout, silent genius. The player who can walk for minutes, watch everything from the outside, and suddenly find a pass no one saw. Supporting Argentina for many foreign fans became a way of protecting that magic, a way of saying, before this ends, I want to see it one more time. And that is why the 2026 World Cup carries such a strong emotional weight. Because it does not feel like just another World Cup. It feels like the last great chapter, the final show, the last chance to see Messi on soccer's biggest stage. And that explains why people who are not Argentine may want Argentina to win again. Not because they hate their country, not because they give up on their national team, but because they feel Messi represents something that is even above normal competition. He represents an era, a way of playing, a childhood, a memory, a romantic idea of soccer. Brazil's case deserves a particular analysis, because there, the surrender of national pride has deeper roots than it seems. Brazil is not just any country. Brazil is the country of Pelé, of Garrincha, of Zico, of Romario, of Ronaldo, of Ronaldinho, of Neymar. Brazil does not only play soccer. Brazil built part of its national identity around soccer. Jogo Bonito is not an advertising phrase. It is a way of understanding life, the body, joy, and creativity on a field. That is why, when a Brazilian recognizes an Argentine, the gesture carries twice the weight. And with Messi, there is a story that softened that border. Ronaldinho was a key figure in Leo's early years at Barcelona. He was the one who welcomed him, who took him under his wing, who treated him as an equal when many people still did not know who that short kid from Rosario was. The image of Ronaldinho celebrating with Messi is not minor. For many Brazilians, Messi did not appear as an enemy. He first appeared as the child protected by one of their great idols. And then there is Neymar. Neymar, the great Brazilian idol of the last decade, shared a locker room, success, and friendship with Messi. He was his teammate. He was his soccer brother. And on more than one occasion, he made his affection and admiration for Leo clear. That also gave the average Brazilian fan emotional permission to do something that, in another context, would have seemed like betrayal: admire the rival. When two of the most beloved figures in modern Brazilian soccer have such a strong relationship with Messi, competitive pride becomes more flexible. It does not disappear, but it allows recognition. And Brazilian fans who understand soccer like few others in the world know how to distinguish between the rival and the genius. Besides, there is something else that works as a catalyst. Brazil has been going through a kind of soccer identity crisis for years. It has not won a World Cup since 2002. And although it arrives in 2026 with Neymar called up again, it also arrives with a figure marked by injuries, interruptions, and physical doubts. Brazil still has talent. It still has extraordinary players. But many fans feel that the direct connection with Jogo Bonito, with the number 10 who makes people fall in love, with soccer as popular art, no longer appears with the same force as before. Faced with that void, many Brazilians found in Messi something their own national team was not always giving them: pure magic, soccer as art, the one-on-one that captivates, the play that cannot be explained by any tactical system because it simply comes from a place tactics cannot reach. That is why, when part of the Americana recognized Messi in November 2023, it was not applauding Argentina as a country. It was applauding what soccer can be when Messi is inside it. And that is the most impressive thing, because Messi made even the historic rival pause, a minimal pause, an uncomfortable pause, but a real pause, as if, for 1 second, national pride were suspended and something older, deeper, and purer appeared: respect for talent. But the phenomenon does not end in Brazil. In fact, perhaps the most striking part happens much farther away, in Asia, particularly in India and Bangladesh. And to understand that, you have to go much further back in time. Because Bangladesh's love for Argentina did not begin with Messi. Messi inherited it, he multiplied it, and he took it to a global scale. The root of that passion is Diego Maradona, especially in the 1986 World Cup. Bangladesh, like other countries in the region, has a history shaped by British colonialism, and anti-colonial sentiment is part of its cultural memory in a deep way. So, when Maradona scored the hand of God against England in Mexico 1986, and minutes later scored the goal of the century, for millions of people that was not just a soccer match, it was a symbolic revenge, a nation from the global south defeating the old empire, a small, rebellious, brilliant, and defiant man humiliating a historic power through soccer. For Bangladesh, Argentina became something more than a foreign national team. It became an emotional symbol, and that bond passed from generation to generation, first with Maradona, then with Messi. But Messi added another layer to that story. Because Leo's story is not the story of the rebel who challenges power with fury. It is the story of the fragile boy who seemed not to have the body to make it, the child with growth problems, the talent who had to leave home, the genius who, for years, was told he could not win with his national team, the player who lost finals, who was criticized, who quit, who came back, who carried an absurd pressure, and who, only at 35 years old, won the cup he was missing. That story connects with millions of people because it does not speak only about soccer. It speaks about waiting, about frustration, about resistance, about not giving up when everything seems closed, about continuing to try when the world has already written your ending. And that, in Bangladesh, in India, in Kerala, or in any corner of the planet, is understood without translation. Because everyone knows what it means to wait. Everyone knows what it means to lose. Everyone knows what it means to feel that something arrives late. And everyone understands what it means to get up one more time. During Qatar 2022, the images from Bangladesh went around the world. Thousands of people gathered to watch Argentina's matches, streets filled with sky blue and white flags, massive celebrations after every victory, people crying, shouting, praying, and celebrating for a national team that plays thousands of miles away. And in Kerala, in southern India, something similar happened. Giant murals, flags, screens, crowds following Argentina at dawn, entire towns divided between Argentina and Brazil fans as if it were a local rivalry. That is not a viral trend. That is not a social media trend. That is soccer culture rooted for decades. Because in those countries, many people do not have their own national team competing in a World Cup with real chances of winning it. So they choose with their hearts. They choose based on history, on values, on emotion, on identity. And Argentina's story, first with Maradona and then with Messi, gave them a powerful narrative. The narrative of the South, of talent against power, of the small against the giant, of the imperfect genius, of the one who suffers, falls, comes back, and finally wins. That is why Messi is not only an admired player, he is a story that millions of people feel as their own, and that is the key to everything. Messi did not need to be the tallest. He did not need to be the strongest. He did not need to be the one who shouted the most, provoked the most, or imposed himself the most physically. He needed to be the most persistent, the one who kept going when everyone said it was already enough, the one who came back after losing, the one who endured impossible comparisons, the one who accepted carrying a jersey that, for years, seemed to weigh more than any other, the one who won the last possible cup when many already thought the train had passed. And that is why his story is so universal. Because Messi represents a fantasy that does not depend on being Argentine. The fantasy that it is still possible, even if it is late, even if you have lost before, even if they have criticized you, even if it seems like your best chance has already passed, even if the world has decided for you that you are not going to make it. Messi won when he no longer had any margin, and that turned his triumph in Qatar into something much bigger than a sporting coronation. It turned it into a kind of emotional repair for millions of people. And now, with the 2026 World Cup ahead, that emotion is being activated again, but in a different way. Because in 2022, the world wanted to see whether Messi could finally win. In 2026, the world wants to see whether Messi can say goodbye in the most impossible way. It is no longer just about winning. It is about seeing him one more time, seeing him walk on a World Cup field with Argentina's number 10, seeing him draw opponents in, seeing him lift his head, seeing him find a pass no one saw, seeing him prove that, even with the passage of time, there are things that cannot be trained, cannot be bought, and cannot be replaced. That is why there are people in cities all over the planet who find themselves shouting a Messi goal louder than one from their own national team. That is why there are fans from other countries who, even though they support their team, also want Argentina to go far. That is why the Messi phenomenon makes classic soccer nationalism so uncomfortable, because it breaks the logic of mine against yours. Messi created a third category. It is not just my country. It is not just the rival. It is, I want to see this player make history one more time. And that is extremely rare, almost impossible. But it is happening. It is happening in Brazil, where the historic rival can recognize the genius. It is happening in Bangladesh, where Argentina is experienced as an emotional inheritance from Maradona. It is happening in Kerala, where the Scaloneta can bring streets to a standstill at dawn. It is happening in places where the Argentine flag does not represent a nationality, but a story of talent, of falling, of waiting, of revenge, of hope. And maybe that is why the Messi phenomenon is so difficult to explain with statistics alone. You can talk about goals, you can talk about assists, you can talk about Ballon d'Or awards, you can talk about Champions Leagues, you can talk about Copa Americas, you can talk about the Qatar World Cup, you can talk about records, matches, titles, and numbers. But none of that is enough to explain why a person in Bangladesh cries for Argentina, why a Brazilian can applaud Messi, why a child in India paints a sky blue and white flag on a wall, why millions of people who were not born in Argentina feel that Messi's final adventure belongs to them too. The answer lies in something simpler and deeper. Messi made soccer feel human again. In an age of machines, systems, data, physical performance, and tactical pressure, Messi still seems to play from an emotional place, as if every play reminded us that soccer was not born to be perfect. It was born to move us. And that is what the world does not want to lose. It does not want to lose Messi. It does not want to lose that way of understanding the game. It does not want to lose the feeling that something unexpected can still appear. Something beautiful. Something that was not in the plan. Something no one can manufacture. That is why, when Argentina plays the 2026 World Cup, it will not play only for Argentines. It will also play for everyone who found in Messi a reason to watch soccer again with a child's eyes. For everyone who felt that Qatar closed a wound for them. For everyone who wants to see whether there is still one last page left. For everyone who understands that some players do not say goodbye only to a national team. They say goodbye to an era. And Messi is that. Not just a world champion, not just Argentina's captain, not just the number 10. Messi is the last great symbol of a soccer that can still make us believe. That is why the entire world wants to see him one more time. That is why even rival countries respect him. That is why Argentina stopped being only Argentina. And that is why, in 2026, every Scaloneta match will carry an emotional weight no other team can match. Because maybe we are not only watching another World Cup, maybe we are watching the last dance of the player who achieved something that seemed impossible, making millions of people in different countries with different flags and different stories want the same thing at the same time, to see Messi happy one more time. So I ask you, which of all these cases seems the most shocking to you? Brazilians recognizing Messi at the Americana? The crowds in Bangladesh celebrating Argentina as if it were their own national team? The madness for the Scaloneta in Kerala? Or is there another corner of the world where you saw the Messi effect break a barrier that seemed impossible to break? Send me your answer in the comments.